Welcome back. So, before now, we have essentially tried to, build the first set of models, right? So for every table that we build, the DBT, we refer to as a model. So essentially what we want to do now is to continue with our plan. So we have this, we essentially have this data set or this query that we would like to build into a data set. And so the first things we have done is import these individual source, models. We've created the four of them into our views, our default test schema views. Now, we would like to create the first, CTE as a model of its own. And so because of that, we will essentially, use the configurations that we had. And also, we would also in the configuration, we will change this to a table because we wouldn't be creating a view. And also we would potentially create this, model into a new schema. So this is what we'll be doing in this part of the course. So essentially first we want to create the CTE. So we could just copy this, right? And then go into, we go into, the DBT and then go to finance and then create a new file, right? So we create a new file and then paste it, the name of the CTE here, which is monthly sales performance analysis. This is something that is going to be the name of that CTE, but we have a prefix, right? A prefix, which is INT. This is int monthly sales performance. Right? This is the prefix that we have. So essentially we have this, we have this intermediate model. So an intermediate model is, usually like not the final model that we will expose for our customers. It could be like the model that's between, right? So sort of we have tagged it with the intermediate. And then now we just go ahead and copy this part of the query. We just copy this part of the query and then bring it here and let's paste it. Now, one thing we have to take note is we do not want to write this query against these items because if we do that, then we're writing it directly against the source data, not the staging data in this case, right? So we want to be able to write it against the staging data. And of course, we could just come and also write this, because this will represent the staging data, but this would also be wrong because we need to refer. There's this theme about references in DBT. So when you have a model, and you want to sort of write another model on top of it, then you should be doing a reference to the previous model. So you have the previous model, and then you want to use this to build something on top of model A, then you should be referencing this model A and not just writing straight select stuff from model A. What is the difference of the two methods? So if you write it directly against model A, what happens is you essentially have a query that runs model A, but there is no relationship between model A and model B, right? So there is no real relationship. And what happens in this case is when you run your DBT run or when you run your pipeline, because there is no relationship that is defined between the two models, then your pipeline just runs, essentially. It runs just like that. And when the pipeline just runs, what happens is the pipeline just runs and you don't really see, you don't really, you can't really control what runs before what. So if model A is up to date, right, it's possible that model B will run before model A if you are not referenced. However, if you reference, you've already told it model B is dependent on model A. And because of that, model B has to wait for model A to run before it then runs. And this is why it's important to have the reference. And so we're going to bring in the reference, right? And the reference is essentially using this format. We take this, go into the DBT pod, and then put it here. Copy this pod, cut it, put it here. And then cut this pod and take it here. And so the same thing will be done for the catalog sales as well, because in the same situation, we are referencing the staging model that we already brought. And then we just copy this part. And also then we sort of do the same for data D. The same thing can be done for call center, right? Right. So now we already referenced all the models. So we're almost there. But because in this case, we wouldn't want to have like a normal view because we're doing some transformations and it's not the one-to-one, like in the case of the staging table. So it makes sense to have a normal table. So we will take the configuration block and then put it on top of our model. Tell the model, please, when we want to run this model, we want to run it as a table. Yeah, we run it as a table. And then also here, we want to also specify the schema. So the name of the schema that we will say this will be the finance schema. And then we can, we're done. And then we can run the query. So we just do a little save. You could come here and do a save. But I think essentially like you have you have Gitpod is doing that autosave anyway. So it's like autosave. So and then when you run, you can run dbt run. And when you run the dbt run in your terminal, then it runs all the models, right? And you will see that now it has sort of run the first 4 models, and now it is running the 5th model, right? Which is the new model that we have created, right? And that is maybe taking a bit of time because this model is a bit complex, right? So, we just take a little bit of time. But what we will notice is that by the time this model is done, then we will have a new schema. I think maybe this could also be one of the reasons why it's taking a bit of time, because then it's creating a new schema because the schema is there for the first time. So you have the test finance, right? So test finance is created based on the fact that the default is test, but now we're being specific that we want this to be finance. So it's test finance, right? And then the object is loaded, which is essentially that object. So when we come back here, we're still waiting for it to be done. I believe it will be done in a moment, actually. We're almost there. So that actually took a while to run. It took about like 3 minutes to run this model. And that's even more reason why we just want to run it once, right? So if you notice, this takes like 3 minutes to run. The whole of this takes 3 minutes to run. The whole model takes 3 minutes, 20 seconds. And that means that if everybody had to run that part of the pipeline, maybe because it's at the back of the dashboard, that they have to run for 3 minutes. Now, what we will see is that we have created this new data set in test finance. And so we see new table in test finance. And this is because we had done this. So one thing we could try to do is see how much time does it really take to run the new model we created. Of course, when we were trying to create the model, it took like more than 3 minutes to do that. And so maybe now, if we run the one instead of the queries, perhaps if we run the data itself, right? How long does this take? So we can run the data, see how long it takes. See, it's almost here, like almost immediately, right? And this is because we have been able to model the data. Right? We model the data into our data warehouse in a particular form, right? Basically means that we don't have to run the queries. So the normal queries takes like 3 minutes. And if we wanted to just plug this in the back of the dashboard, it's faster to have, this our new model that we created for everybody in the company than to have them run the query every time they open the dashboard. And this is going to take like 3.5 minutes. So we're already getting some improvements. In the next videos, we would be building the rest of the pipeline. So let's catch up in the next video so that we can build the monthly sales performance comparison model. Right. Thank you. See you in the next.